signed to the AFTRA and the SAGs and all this stuff. And
that's the thing. They're unionized. I can't see that happening in the wrestling world, but if it did, we'd see a huge change.
DJ Delz, I love you.
Today was a big day, man. You interviewed Andrew Yang. Today it came out. A politician that called out Vince McMahon with talent being independent contractors and basically being controlled, kind of where they can't go and go on Twitch or Cameo and stuff like that. It was a fantastic interview. And in the description, as I was saying, I have a link to his channel.
Look, I think that, and you know this as a wrestling fan, unfortunately, wrestling doesn't really get a lot of mainstream coverage.
That's right.
And I think that Andrew Yang certainly talked about that in our interview, where it's just like, it's in the wrestling world, like kind of let them do their thing. Mm-hmm. I wanted to have him on because he spoke very frankly in that tweet about, like, he called these corrupt business practices. And for people who might not be aware of what we're talking about here, WWE wrestlers are termed as independent contractors. Well, most independent contractors are like the guy who fixes your roof or like the guy who redoes your like kitchen. Well, here they're basically treating them like the exclusivity of an employee, but then not giving them any of the benefits of being an employee. They don't get maternity or paternity leave. They don't get a 401k. They don't get insurance. Like it's just weird. Like they're trying to call it one thing, but then not apply the rules of that thing. So I wanted to have Andrew Yang on to just speak a little bit more about this and dive into it. And I was fortunate that he agreed, and I was super grateful for his time because, I mean, this is a pretty busy time of year if you're a politician. So for him to be able to carve out some time to do this, I'm just hopeful that it can make some real change, because I think what WWE is doing is not right. And I think that they've got to be aware of this. Freddie Prinze Jr., who worked briefly for WWE as a writer, he said it best. He said, 80s business models don't work well in 2020.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we've got here.
You're 100% right, man. And, these guys bust their ass in WWE. I mean, we both have friends that work for the company or that have worked for the company too. And it's like, that's that work schedule. They're working really hard. And for them to be treated like the guy that's, fixing up your house, through a company that's just getting hired for the weekend, which there's no disrespect to that person. But, it's like these guys are out on the road. They're earning a lot of money. They are basically the faces of these companies. And how do they get away with it? But I loved in the interview how you played devil's advocate. And you did say, and this is why I do like you, is because you said, hey, you could also look at it in this sense. They weren't forced to sign those contracts. And I was like, yeah, boy. I mean, because at the end of the day, you got to look at it both sides. But it's like there's still right and wrong, and the right way. You should treat people right, especially,
But the problem is WWE has a monopoly. So they're basically saying, it's a false dichotomy of like, do you want to work here or not?
Yeah, it's either
and if you do want to work here, here's the terms of our contract. And if you disagree with this, well, you're not going to work here. So it's really interesting that wrestling is the only performance art where you are the character. Like it's crazy to like. Bryan Cranston was Walter White for, what was that, 6 seasons? Yes. We don't look at Bryan Cranston and go,
that's Walter White. Yeah.
But we look at Nick Nemeth and go, that's Dolph Ziggler. We look at Terry Bollea and go, that's Hulk Hogan.
And there's a lot, not to cut you off, a lot of people don't even know who their real names are still.
Of course. And this is the only performance art where this and I get it, because in the 80s, Hulk Hogan was Hulk Hogan. Like right. Mark Calloway was not the Undertaker was not Mark Calloway. The Undertaker was the Undertaker. And I get that, like, when kayfabe existed, but it still kind of does, but when kayfabe was a thing, that was it. You were the character all the time. And I think that I'm hopeful that we'll start to see a shift now where you are that person playing a character. And Ethan Page, who's Impact Wrestling, former tag team champion, on his page, it's Julian, or Ethan Page played by Julian.
Yeah.
Same with Jordan Grace. Like Jordan Grace goes by her real name on there. And it's like, I think we're going to start to see a shift, probably not in WWE, but everywhere else, where it's like Sean Spears, for example, that's just going to be Ronnie. And I think that it doesn't make sense to me that in every other aspect of performing that exists, except in wrestling.
So should wrestlers really just be like looked at as actors? That's really what it should be, right?
That's what it is, right?
I mean,
now,
exactly. They're acting and they're doing stunts. The only other thing that I can compare wrestling to where people really just look at the character as them 24/7, even when they're not wrestling, is soap operas. Like, because I'm like the soap opera fans see the soap opera people out there. They don't know their names half the time.
Yeah, I completely agree. But those actors would never have a social media channel where it was their character's name.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's insane. I mean, they're getting treated properly. You know, they're signed to the AFTRA and the SAGs and all this stuff. And
that's the thing. They're unionized. I can't see that happening in the wrestling world. But if it did, we'd see a huge change.
I hope you enjoyed this clip. Thank you to Chris Van Vliet for being a guest. Make sure to watch the entire show and watch his interview. You got to see this interview. All of that will be linked in the description box below. Thumbs up the video, subscribe if you're new, and leave your comments because I want to know what you're thinking. We out.